Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. So my name is Charlotte and I'm joined by my colleague Andrew, who will be helping me to explore how we can boost independent writing across the secondary curriculum with DocsPlus. We do also have Rosie today, who will be answering your questions in the Q&A box. And just so you're all aware that you will all be receiving a recording of the session afterwards as well too. So both Andrew and I are education consultants here at Crick Software, and our roles predominantly are to support teachers and educational practitioners daily. So we're always getting first-hand accounts of the challenges schools are facing when it comes to just encouraging independent writing, really. And one of the things that we often find when we're initially looking at implementing literacy software, especially at a secondary stage, is immediately we think of using it in English lessons. Do you find this as well, Andrew?
Yeah, all the time. We think of writing and straight away English language, English literature, but writing's a skill that we use in so many different lessons, whether that's we were writing up a science experiment, looking at social media impacts, rock formations, kind of the list can go on and on. If a learner can access a tool that can help them get their ideas down on paper, it's just going to have a massive impact on kind of the whole school journey. We starting from year 7 potentially. Now we understand that there and hopefully we kind of debunk this misconception. But there are some concerns by teachers in a way that they feel unsure of how to incorporate software into lessons effectively, or without adding extra workload, and also kind of without having to become the SEN expert. And hopefully we can show in the session today that we can kind of debunk that and show how we can use DocsPlus.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the session itself, it's going to be about 30 minutes, and we're going to be taking a look at how DocsPlus can enable students to access lesson content across the curriculum, and really looking at planning and preparing for writing. So looking at those different stages. In terms of DocsPlus itself, we're going to be taking a look at some of our built-in scaffolding and productivity tools. And these really help students throughout that whole writing process. So we're going to be looking at writing frames, vocabulary banks, word prediction, all those kind of good stuff that's going to help learners get those ideas down on paper. And then throughout all of this, we're going to be showing how DocsPlus proactively encourages learners to review and edit their written work, something that they can start looking at and identifying to do themselves. So, of course, as Andrew just mentioned, hopefully we're going to kind of debunk that myth that DocsPlus can just be used in English lessons. So today, the areas we're going to be looking at are history and science, but this is not just limited to history and science. That's just the subjects we're picking out for today. And we're going to be following the journey of the learner. So we're going to be starting off from that research stage all the way up to that final piece of writing. And we're going to be showing you how the resources and the tools within DocsPlus can be used with the learners that do require that extra support, but also how other learners in the classroom can also receive a bit of help from these resources as well.
Yeah. Now, before we even start looking at writing, we've almost got to take a step back and think, okay, how do we learn about this new subject that we're coming across? Traditionally, I suppose the way that we do this is we'd have PowerPoint, and students would use their notebooks, making notes, expanding on kind of things on the screen. Now, of course, that's great, but looking at some of those challenges, we might have some students that are ready to move on, from that slide that you've got on at the moment. Or alternatively, we might, some of our learners might need to go back and review information, but of course you might have be already kind of a couple of slides on from that. But that's where kind of we can utilize DocsPlus with not much extra work really. And we can do this with our kind of doc reader feature, and we're going to use this PowerPoint as an example. So what we can do with PowerPoints is we can actually save them as PDFs, which is great. And I know Charlotte's just going to do this just in the background so you can all see. But yeah, when we go to save a PowerPoint, one of the options in the save as a type, as you can see there, is a PDF. And then, of course, what we can do is we can save this in a number of different ways, whether that's the school network, cloud storage, for example. But what we can do once we've saved that PDF is we can actually open it up in DocsPlus. What this does, so all of those notes from the lesson we can now have within DocsPlus, so we can just kind of constantly refer back to them whenever we need them. So it's all about you know, the students going at their own pace rather than keeping up with everyone in the lesson, their peers. You know, it's looking at kind of their learning style, their approach to learning. And what we can do is, if we want to listen or use any of the information, DocsPlus can actually read these sentences out loud to us as well. So what we can do is we can highlight a section, whether that's a question or a paragraph. And then at the very top, we've got this little speaker button. So when we click on that.
Explain why Mary, Queen of Scots, presented a threat to Elizabeth's reign in England.
Yeah, and you know, we can have headphones in with this, you know, review the slides whenever we want. And I suppose another important thing to consider as well is, you know, we're not kind of affecting other learners as well. You know, you know, it's it's kind of looking at that inclusive classroom, really. Everyone's involved at the same kind of stage. We're all learning the same things together. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the beauties of using something like this is that if you already have a PowerPoint that you've created for the lesson, if this is something that you're using regularly, it means incorporating it into DocsPlus isn't necessarily a massive additional task. You're not having to create a whole new thing for different learners. It's something that everybody can access, and we can access all of this together. What we find is predominantly it's the difference between learners keeping up and not having to catch up as well. It's something, like Andrew said, we can do this at our own pace. So from here, in this particular example, we now have a question that requires a written answer. So at this stage, our learners might want to start planning out their ideas before we start diving in and writing. So what I'm going to do is today, I'm just going to copy and paste this text. All right, click and copy, and I'm just going to paste that in. So that's now on my document. That can almost be used as my header, my title, ready for me to use. Now, at this point, we might be working with some learners who find it beneficial to plan out their ideas on one of our workspaces, which I alluded to just here now. So in this workspace, you can see we've already pre-mapped out our question. We've got a few different areas in here that have already been filled out for us, but we could also add in visual aids for any learners, or we could also verbally record ideas in a voice note. But I've got a couple of blank slots here, so I'm just going to double click and I'm just going to start writing in some keywords and phrases that I might want to use when answering this question. So really, learners are just able to break down their ideas on what they want to say and map this out in a way that's going to work best for them. So from a learner's perspective, this can be a real game changer, especially if recording ideas using pen and paper is a bit of a challenge, as we can map this out alongside our peers and also potentially reduce that staff support that's needed, allowed to just complete this really. So students no longer have to worry about planning out their ideas on a blank piece of paper next to their laptops, or they don't have to worry about opening a new document and having 6 different versions of different things open. It's something that can be here utilised within DocsPlus as well.
Yeah, and then from this, of course, you know, we want to make this as useful as possible within the lesson. So there are a couple of things that we can do with this workspace now. The first one is to simply print it off. So to do that, we'd go Smart Tab, click Print, and as you can see there, got all of our great ideas in that workspace. We can print it off, stick it in our book, annotate it, you know, on the physical copy, which is great. It's another way that we can use DocsPlus kind of outside of a screen, kind of thinking outside the box. But what we can also do, you know, keeping it kind of within the DocsPlus software, is we can actually turn this workspace into a word bar really quickly as well, which is great. So as you can see Charlotte there doing it just in the background. And what this will do is it will take all of our brilliant ideas that we've developed over the course of those 15 minutes, and it will make it just a bit more useful for our learners. And I suppose having it in this format, taking all those great ideas, it means that you know, it's the planning stage is accessible for that learner, and I suppose it avoids them having to navigate between lots of different screens. So, you know, going to the workspace, going back into, you know, the document, vice versa. And what we can also do with the word bars as well is, if you need any kind of verbal support, we can right click as well, and it will read the words back to us, which is really nice. And then we can
Mary, Queen of Scots.
And then we can left click to insert the words as well into the document if we need to. So yeah, it's just yeah, I suppose it's yeah, just having that structure really, you know, and the prompts for, you know, that hopefully helps with the structure of their writing, I suppose. And yeah, you can see Charlotte in the background here just finishing that sentence off. Yeah.
Mary, Queen of Scots, threatened Elizabeth I's reign as she was supported by English Catholics.
There we go. Yeah, Andrew, you're absolutely right. And I think what the amazing part about this is that learners can create these tools from scratch independently. Like you say, we've got that speech support function embedded throughout all of this, so they can listen back to these individual words or phrases, hear what work they've created. And like you say, those ideas have not been lost throughout that planning process. And learners don't feel like they're in a situation where they're putting all of this time and this energy into this plan and then have to put this just as much or even more into the writing, because we're almost duplicating some of that information, whereas that's all much more of a smoother transition between that planning stage and that writing stage. So of course, from a learner's perspective, at this point, we would continue to use these word bars and finish off our question. Now, it is worth noting that we do actually have an area that comes with DocsPlus that is dedicated to providing staff and students pre-made resources. And this area is called Learning Grids. And then essentially within learning grids, as you can see just here, we have thousands of pre-made resources. And these are designed to be used with learners from aged 11 to 18 years old. And they've been made by our fantastic curriculum team. And what I love about this is that it really just highlights how much DocsPlus can be used across the curriculum. So of course, as you can see here, we do have the tabs for English language and literature, but we have resources on science, geography, history, social science, and we are adding to these so frequently. These are always updating and changing. I'm sure Andrew will agree with me. Every time we come on here, there always seems to be brand new resources being made. So we can use these different tabs, or we can use the search bar along the top to get DocsPlus to look through learning grids and find the subject or topic that we're studying about. So for example, if I was to write out the human body, we'll change our topic now. You can see we've got lots of different resources that have come up ready for us to use. So there's so many ways that this can be used, and it's always worth kind of taking a look within DocsPlus to find out exactly what we have. Now, I'm just going to jump into these different tabs here. We might actually search up, we'll go for the brain today. And as you can see, we've got a variety of word bars and workspaces that are ready to be used with our learners. And like with our history topic, we might want to start off in a workspace. Yeah.
And then as you can see, lots of visual support. But the great thing about these ones is that the pre-made workspaces is that we just have to fill in the boxes. It's not as overwhelming to create something from scratch. It's already kind of planned out for us. As you can see, Charlotte's just putting in some ideas in here just by clicking and typing as well. So it's really easy, no kind of advanced menus and stuff like that. It's just great for learners that struggle to get started, really, just having that initial planning stage, but also from a teaching perspective, having these available through learning grids, it's just immediately going to save us time. We're not having to make these resources, but it's still a bespoke activity for all learners as well. The whole class can access this resource because it's differentiated by outcome as well, which is really nice. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, this is where at this point we might, of course, before even filling some of this out, we might want to print this off. So for any learners that aren't using technology to complete the lesson, they'll have that fully blank space there available. For some learners, you might want to partially fill this in. Again, that can be done traditionally or digitally, and it's really where you can bring in that inclusivity with DocsPlus as well. Now, of course, from this particular point, we might want to do what we did before, where we create a word bar from our workspace. But if we just head on back to Learning Grids, you can see we've got lots of different pre-made word bars ready for us to use as well.
There we go. And just like before, it sits at the bottom of the screen, so it's really clear what we're going to use. We don't clutter the screen up within DocsPlus, which is really nice. And as learners, we can just click on the words to insert them into the document. We can right click to listen to them as well. And I suppose the main thing is it's just helping structure writing, really, and it's increasing independence within lessons. And I suppose for students, it's that sense of achievement that they've kind of completed the work on their own with support, of course, but it's their work that they've completed, which is really nice. And like I said, that sense of achievement for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to now use this pre-made word bar to create a piece of writing on the subject of the brain. However, we might be in a situation where some students need a little bit of extra support. And one of the tools that I really like to suggest schools to use is our voice note tool just up here. So voice notes is essentially a designated space for students to verbally record their ideas prior to writing. So we're essentially capturing those ideas, and they can refer back to this throughout that lesson. And some staff in schools that I've worked with also really like to use voice notes to record tasks, objectives for any learners that might struggle to retain instruction, or very simply, we just want to encourage a bit of independence when it comes to carrying on through that lesson. But there's so many different ways that I've seen this being used. So I'm going to use this as an example of recording my ideas before I start my writing. So I'm just going to click on my red button. The brain controls complex behaviour. It has different regions that carry out different functions. And when I click done, this is just going to generate a speech bubble on the left-hand side of the document. And all our learners need to do is click on this once. The brain controls complex behaviour. It has different regions that carry out different functions. Okay. So now we've captured our idea, we've listened to the idea. From here, some of our learners might find it beneficial to use a tool to help us actually complete that piece of writing. So I'm going to use our predictor tool today. So the predictor tool essentially works like your phone predictor will. It's going to offer our learners words that may logically come next in the sentence and could be a really fantastic alternative for staff members scribing their work as well. Because again, it's really just about promoting that independence as needed. So straight away, we can see that I've been offered a word. And again, we've got that right click function. So if I just select the word, automatically DocsPlus is going to start offering me words that may logically come next. So as I finish this off, and then over here we can see I might want to use some of the words from my word bars at this point. So I'm going to go for complex behaviour.
The brain controls complex behaviour.
Okay. Now, as you might have noticed throughout this whole webinar, is that when we put in that punctuation, DocsPlus automatically starts reading that sentence back out to us. And the auditory response really just encourages learners to review their work so they can hear if there's any spelling errors, any word order errors, and it starts to encourage a bit more independent review. Now, if I was to close down my predictor tool, and if the learner was to make a spelling error, so if I was to type out there are different regions of the brain.
There are different regions of the brain.
We can hear immediately that DocsPlus has read out the word that's exactly on the screen, not what I intended to write, and this can easily be rectified just by right-clicking and looking through those different options available. And again, you've got that speech support
Regions.
to listen to confirm that that is the word that your students are looking for. So really just designed to be a bit more independent for our learners creating the actual writing.
Go, and using all these tools, it's about the students showing their true understanding of the subject. We're just aiding them in that journey. We're not completing the work for them. We're giving the tools to be able to access the different curriculum areas. But from a teacher's perspective, especially completing a piece of work like this might be a huge amount of progress for one of our students. Now we might think, okay, well, how is this work actually being completed? We can see the document, but what have they actually gone into? What have they used? Now, this is where our analytics tool comes into play, because what we can do as teachers and support staff is we can really break down this document and see what support has that student used. So going through the headings at the top, we can see, 42 words, 13 of these came from just typing on the keyboard. So it's an area that we can really celebrate with those students now. The next section, we've got the predictor, but we can also see when we had to listen to words as well by the little tick, which is really nice. So we can see, did they need that verbal kind of support in there? Then we can look at the word bars as well. Now, what's really important with this is we might have provided a range of word bars that student has used. And from here, we might say, have they used a lot of this? Have they not used a lot? So we can kind of really plan out the next stages of the lessons. Do we need to give them a different type of activity that might be more accessible, I suppose? And then finally, just in the two sections, we've got a really important one, which is to spell check. And of course, we can see the original spelling as well, which is really nice. And that speech feedback, so we had to listen to it back. And then finally, we can see any copy and pasted text. Now, of course, that's come from our PDF reader, but this might have come from Wikipedia, BBC Bitesize, so it just keeps a track of that as well, you know, how much of this has just been copy and pasted, so isn't really a true identification, you know, it's not a true kind of representation of that student's work. And you know, all of this, it's all about kind of just providing evidence and assessment. But what's great as well about the analytics tool is we're allowing the students to work independently. They can almost kind of get on with the lesson in that sense, working independently without having kind of staff members to sacrifice, you know, their time in the lesson, you know, with them. You know, we can use staff time more effectively going around the class and promoting that independence for learners as well that might be using the software DocsPlus.
Absolutely, Andrew. And one of the things that I think I really like personally about analytics is that if we go into our print section, we can actually print off the student's piece of work. And if we scroll down, all of that analytics information is printed off alongside this. And all of this analytics information is also saved alongside the document as well. So if this is a piece of work that we're going to be working on over several lessons, we can see how this is built and how this evolved. When it comes to parents' evening, we can print this off and we can show exactly how our students are progressing using DocsPlus. And again, of course, this can then be further annotated as much or as little as needed. And again, I think that's where you can get that really nice transition between using technology and then moving that into traditional forms, such as, again, having that in our workbook or our work folder. So all of these tools are essentially used to try and help incorporate that inclusive classroom where learners are essentially independently accessing those features that they need. And it's just about showing their knowledge, showing their understanding. And like Andrew said, kind of throughout all of this, it's not about being that SEN expert and knowing everything there is to know. It's about being able to provide students with those right tools so that we can see what they know, we can provide them the support that they need, and it means that they can continue to grow and carry on throughout their school journey. So it is worth noting that actually several of these tools can be used in students' exams if they qualify for access arrangements as well. So we have a little bit more information on our website, and I'll just show you where that is now. So if you just head on over to cricsoft.com, and if you head into the DocsPlus section and exams just over here, you can see we've got a huge variety of information. So again, St Augustine's Priory School, they are avid users of DocsPlus. They've found that just using DocsPlus exams saved them 300 hours of staff time alone in their first year of implementing it for their exam season, which was absolutely fantastic. And we've just found that students who can use DocsPlus, and also that more importantly that this is something they can access news within lessons regardless kind of where they are in school. It makes the exam situation a much calmer, more familiar environment. And I think it can be, obviously exams in itself are an incredibly stressful time for students. It's the point where this is all the hard work and this is where it's all accumulating to. So just being able to use something that they are familiar with can really make a big difference. And if you scroll down as well, we've got some really key information on how DocsPlus meets the JCQ SQA regulations and how much money potentially could be saved with DocsPlus as well. And that's just from an exam perspective. So today, me and Andrew have really just shown you a snapshot of what DocsPlus can do. And we know there are a lot of teachers here from lots of different schools. You're all working with different cohorts of students, all with different needs and requirements. So if you're considering whether DocsPlus might be something you would like to use in school, I'd urge you to book in a free demonstration with us. Now, I'm just going to head back to my main screen and put our contact details up here. So essentially this will just be, when it comes to a demonstration, this will just be with your school, so you can ask any questions that you have that we've actually not covered in this session, and more importantly we can hone in on what you're specifically interested in. So if you'd like to find out more about how Docs can be used in exams, or if you'd like to get some other members of staff to come along and see how DocsPlus could help with the learners that they work with, all of this can be done in a free demonstration, and you'll be able to book that via the link we email you. or you can just click request you can request one as part of the short survey that's going to pop up at the end of today's session as well. We do ask, please do fill in the survey if you can. It's just a couple of quick short questions, and it just makes sure that the sessions like this are as useful as they can be for you all. Now we have a couple of minutes left, so me and Andrew will stick around, of course, if there's any questions from the Q&A box, but I know Rose has been doing an amazing job. But thank you all for joining. I hope you found this session useful.
Thank you. Sorry, Harriet, I've just seen your question. I know Rosie's answering it at the moment. For anyone else in the meeting, DocsPlus does work on iPads and Chromebooks as well, Harriet. So if you do have any of those, it will be compatible with that as well, just so you're aware. But like I said, I'm not sure kind of what technology you're running in school at the moment. And of course, like Charlotte said, oh, brilliant. Yeah, you've got iPads. Yeah, so DocsPlus is compatible with iPads, which is great. You have access to learning grids, the predictor, the workspace and stuff like that. So yeah, of course, in that demonstration, we can have a talk about that as well. I know Rosie's just popping in there. She's just answering your question on how to book in that demo. But yeah, it does work on iPads as well. So yeah, we can hopefully have a look at that as well in the demo. Yeah.